And Father Winter was getting old. He had been born with the earth itself, and he had seen the first of men come to the planet and spread their way across the far corners of the globe. And he could feel his age now in his bones, and he knew that it was time to turn that mantle over to someone younger. And who better than to one of his own sons, for he had 3 fine sons. And he turned to the eldest and said, "My son, if you can make the people of the earth respect you, then the mantle of winter is yours." And that eldest son was bitter cold, and he was a giant of a man. He stood 10 foot tall, blue-skinned, wearing black iron armour, all frosted with ice and snow. And his beard too was full of sleet, and his eyes glittered like glaciers. And when he spoke with the murmuring anger of the north wind. "I will make those people of the earth respect the might of the winter, for I can cause boulders themselves to crack. I can freeze the mightiest rivers so they slow and stop. And I can freeze the marrow of those men in their bones." And so he went down to the earth. And at first it was just as he said, and the men of earth were in awe of the power of the winter. But then they learned, if they built a warm house, or if they lit a fire, they could keep out the worst of that cold. And then they discovered to their great joy that if they put blades on the feet of their shoes, they could skate across those frozen rivers. And so the winter times echoed with the laughter of mankind. And so bitter cold made his way back to his father, his head hanging low in shame. And Father Winter turned to his middle son. Aching One was also a giant. He stood there, shrouded in a great grey cloak of sleet and snow. You could not see his face, but when his hand appeared from out of that cloak, it was skeletal. And when he spoke, it was with the hissing menace of the east wind. I will teach the people of the earth to fear the winter, to fear the lack of all things that winter has, to fear the lack of food, to fear the lack of health, to fear the lack of time to do the things that must be done in those long winter nights. And so he made his way down to the earth. And it was to start with, just as he said, the people of the earth feared the coming of winter. They feared the hunger that it might bring. But then they discovered that they only had to preserve the food and store it well from the previous harvest, and they would have food to take them all the way through the winter. And if they lit those fires that kept out bitter cold, they would provide light to make those winter evenings a place of jollity, a place to celebrate with friends now that the hard work of the harvest was done. And so he too made his way back to his father, his head hanging low in shame. And Father Winter turned to his youngest son. End of Year was a slight youth, and he stood in a simple white shift, his long hair the colour of straw, pale like a January sunshine. And he said, I will teach the people of the earth to respect winter for its place in the year, for it is my cool touch that soothes the plants and the soil and puts them to sleep until the springtime, when it is time for them to come back again. And it is my frosty breath that finally stills the summer insects and so provides the welcome relief to the world until they spring again the next year. And it is my fingertips that trace the ice on windows and coat the spider's web with the prettiest ice. And so he made his way down to earth, and it was as he said, and soon mankind began to respect winter for its place in things. For they realized without its cold snap, there was no reason for the bright colors of the autumn. There was no trigger for that green springing of the spring that was to come. And after a while, they respected it so much that they held a festival in its honor, and they called it Yule. And it was a time for looking back at the things that had been done and looking forward to the good things of the new year to come. And so Father Winter passed the mantle to his youngest son. And now, on a bright winter's day, if you stand in the sunshine, you may catch a glimpse of that slight youth in a simple white shift, his straw-coloured hair the colour of January sunshine. But now about his shoulders he wears the mantle of winter.